When life hits hard, the first and most crucial step is to accept reality before you can change it. That might sound simple, but in practice, it's one of the hardest things a person can do. Because when life throws chaos, pain, or unexpected hardships your way, your first instinct is often to resist, to deny, to fight back emotionally, to say, this isn't fair, this shouldn't be happening. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Resisting reality doesn't change it. It only drains you. Think about it. How many times have you seen people waste years of their lives trapped in anger, regret, or bitterness because they refuse to accept what has happened to them? A failed relationship, a career collapse, the loss of a loved one. These are painful experiences. But pain does not destroy you. Your refusal to accept it does. The person who refuses to accept that their relationship is over clings to the past, unable to move forward. The one who cannot accept a mistake drowns in self-blame rather than learning from it. The individual who refuses to face their own weaknesses never grows. Acceptance does not mean liking what has happened to you. It does not mean approving of it. It means acknowledging that it is real and that you now have a choice. You can keep resisting, which will only deepen your suffering, or you can face reality head on and start dealing with it. That's where real power begins, because once you fully accept where you are without distortion or self-deception, you finally put yourself in a position to change what happens next. Psychologists call this radical acceptance, the ability to see reality as it is, without judgment, without excessive emotion, just clear and honest awareness. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychologist, spoke about this deeply in his work. He said that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies our power to choose. That space, the moment you stop resisting reality and begin responding to it, is where transformation happens. So how do you practice this? First, be brutally honest with yourself. If you've lost something valuable, a person, a job, an opportunity, stop telling yourself the comforting lies that keep you stuck. Face the truth. Say it out loud. This is where I am. This is what has happened. I don't like it, but it's real. You might feel a sense of grief, maybe even anger, but once you verbalize reality, you begin to take control of your response to it. Second, drop the why me mentality. Life is not a fairness game. No one is keeping score to make sure the good are rewarded and the bad are punished. Wasting time wondering why life has been unfair to you does nothing. What matters is what you do next. Will you let this moment define you as a victim? Or will you use it as fuel to become something stronger, wiser, and more capable? Lastly, take responsibility not for what happened, but for what happens next. Because the moment you own your situation, you reclaim your power. If you keep blaming external factors, waiting for something to change for you, you will stay stuck. But if you say, this is my life, and I will shape what comes next, then you become the architect of your future rather than a passive participant in your suffering. Most people never reach this stage because it requires facing discomfort head on. It demands emotional discipline. But discipline leads to freedom. The freedom to stop being controlled by your past. The freedom to stop being at the mercy of circumstances. The freedom to move forward unburdened by self-deception. So if life has knocked you down, start here, accept it, own it, and then decide who do you want to become in the face of this. Because that choice is still yours. It always has been. When life knocks you down, the worst thing you can do is waste energy trying to control what is beyond your grasp. And yet that is exactly what most people do. They fixate on the past, obsess over how others see them, or battle circumstances that are entirely outside their influence. But this is a losing game. If you spend your life fighting battles you can't win, you will only exhaust yourself and deepen yourself. Now contrast that with someone who understands the difference between what they can control and what they can't. This person is calm in the face of adversity, not because they are indifferent, but because they know where to focus their efforts. They don't waste time arguing with reality or resenting the unfairness of life. Instead, they direct their attention to what is within their sphere of influence, their thoughts, actions, and responses. This is the foundation of true power. Think about it like a storm. You cannot control the wind, the rain, or the destruction it brings, but you can control how you prepare, how you protect yourself, and how you rebuild once it passes. Most people stand in the middle of the storm, cursing the sky, hoping that sheer frustration will change the weather. But the wise individual accepts the storm for what it is and focuses on what they can do right now. This mindset is one of the most fundamental lessons in both philosophy and psychology. The Stoics, for example, understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and philosopher, wrote extensively about this in Meditations. He argued that while we have no control over external events, we have absolute control over our inner world, our judgments, our perceptions, our ability to respond with wisdom rather than emotion. This distinction is everything. So how do you apply this when life hits hard? First, identify the things you are clinging to that are beyond your control. Are you stuck in resentment over how someone treated you? Are you losing sleep over an outcome that is already set in stone? Are you resisting change that is inevitable? If so, you are pouring energy into something that will never change simply because you wish it would. Let go of it. Not because it doesn't matter, but because your power lies elsewhere. Next, shift your focus to where you do have control. You may not be able to undo the past, but you can control how you move forward. You may not be able to change someone else's behavior, but you can decide how you react to it. You may not have control over the storm, but you can learn how to stand firm within it. There is immense freedom in this shift. The moment you stop wasting energy on the uncontrollable, you reclaim that energy for yourself. You become more strategic, more composed, more effective. And most importantly, you stop being a victim of life's circumstances. So when life hits hard, ask yourself this: am I wasting energy on something I cannot change? Or am I directing my focus toward what I can? Because that choice determines whether you stay stuck or whether you move forward. No matter how difficult the road ahead may be. When life hits hard, one of the most dangerous traps you can fall into is isolation. Pain has a way of making people withdraw. It convinces them that no one will understand, that no one cares, or that their struggles are theirs alone to bear. And at first, isolation may even seem like a relief. You avoid explaining yourself, you avoid judgment, and you convince yourself that you are protecting your dignity. But in reality, isolation is not protection, it is a slow descent into despair. Human beings are social creatures. We are wired for connection. And no matter how strong or independent you think you are, you cannot outthink this fundamental truth. When you are at your lowest, your own mind can become your worst enemy. It distorts reality, magnifies your failures, and traps you in a loop of negative thoughts. And the more you isolate yourself, the worse this spiral becomes. The solution? You must resist the urge to retreat into yourself. You must reach out, even when you don't feel like it, even when it feels unnatural. This doesn't mean you need to spill your emotions to just anyone. In fact, choosing the right people is critical. You need individuals who are grounded, rational, and capable of offering perspective, not those who will fuel your resentment or validate your worst fears. It could be a trusted friend, a mentor, a family member, or even a professional. The point is not just to talk, but to bring your thoughts out of your own head and into the real world where they can be examined and challenged. When you speak your struggles out loud, something fascinating happens. Thoughts that seemed overwhelming begin to shrink in size. Problems that felt insurmountable suddenly appear solvable. Why? Because you are no longer battling them alone. Other perspectives introduce clarity. Other minds provide solutions you would not have considered on your own. And perhaps most importantly, connection reminds you that you are not alone. This is why strong communities are essential, not just in times of crisis, but as a foundation for a meaningful life. Whether it's a close-knit group of friends, a religious or philosophical community, or simply a network of people who share your values, these connections serve as an anchor. They remind you that even when life is brutal, there are still people who stand with you. There's an old saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. This is never more true than in moments of suffering. Pain isolates, but healing happens in connection. So when life hits hard, resist the temptation to disappear into yourself. Find your people, speak your struggles, because sometimes the simple act of being heard is enough to stop you from falling further. When life hits hard, one of the most critical things you must do is take responsibility for what you can control, no matter how small. It's tempting, in the face of adversity, to focus on what has been done to you, the unfairness, the betrayal, the circumstances beyond your control. And yes, life is often cruel and indifferent. But dwelling on that fact will not move you forward. What will? Looking inward and asking yourself a hard question. What can I do right now to make this situation even slightly better? This is not about blaming yourself for things beyond your control. It's not about pretending that suffering is fair or deserved. It's about reclaiming your agency in the middle of the storm. When you fixate on what has been done to you, you give away your power. You become a passive participant in your own life. And the longer you stay in that state, the harder it becomes to dig yourself out. But the moment you shift your mindset even slightly from why is this happening to me to what can I do about it, something changes. You stop being a victim of circumstance and start becoming an architect of your own response. Sometimes the actions you take will seem small, almost insignificant. Maybe it's getting out of bed when every part of you wants to stay there. Maybe it's making a plan, even if you don't feel ready to act on it yet. Maybe it's reaching out for help instead of suffering in silence. These things may not solve your problems immediately, but they create momentum, and momentum is everything. Think about a person trapped in quicksand. The more they panic and flail, the deeper they sink. But if they stay calm and move deliberately, inch by inch, they increase their chances of survival. Life's hardest moments work the same way. The more you focus on what you can do rather than what has been done to you, the more control you reclaim. The truth is, responsibility is not a burden. It's a path forward. It is the first step toward rebuilding yourself after a setback. And here's the paradox. The more responsibility you take, the stronger you become. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is merely enduring life's hardships and instead as someone who is actively shaping their own future. This is where resilience is built. So when life knocks you down, resist the urge to stay there, lost in self-pity or anger. Instead, take an honest look at what is within your control, no matter how small, and start there. Because even the smallest steps taken consistently can lead you out of the darkest places. When life hits hard, one of the most crucial things you must do is master your emotions instead of letting them master you. This is difficult, perhaps one of the most difficult things a person can do. Because when you're in pain, when you're lost, when you feel like everything is falling apart, your emotions will scream at you. They will tell you to give up, to lash out, to run, to drown yourself in distractions. And if you listen to them blindly, they will control you. They will turn you into someone you don't recognize. But emotions are not your enemy. They are signals. Anger, sadness, fear, frustration. These feelings arise for a reason. They're trying to tell you something. The problem is that most people either let emotions rule their decisions or they try to suppress them entirely. Both of these approaches lead to suffering. The real power comes from acknowledging what you feel without becoming a slave to it. Think about it. If you react impulsively every time you feel hurt, you will destroy relationships, make reckless decisions, and create chaos in your own life. On the other hand, if you ignore your emotions completely, you will bury pain that festers and grows, leading to long-term suffering. The key is to find a middle ground, to recognize your emotions without letting them dictate your actions. The question is, how do you do this? First, you name the emotion. Instead of saying, I am angry, say, I feel anger rising in me. That small shift in language creates distance between you and the emotion. It reminds you that feelings are temporary, but your actions can have lasting consequences. Second, you step back and analyze the source. Ask yourself, why am I feeling this? What is this emotion trying to tell me? Often, when we dig deeper, we find that our emotional responses are tied to something deeper than the immediate situation. Maybe you're not just angry at a person, you're angry at a pattern. Maybe you're not just sad about what happened, you're mourning an expectation that was never met. Understanding the root of an emotion helps you process it properly. Third, you channel it productively. If anger rises, don't explode. Use that energy to fuel action towards something meaningful. If sadness weighs you down, don't let it paralyze you. Let it guide you toward what truly matters. Emotions, when harnessed properly, can be some of the greatest sources of strength and wisdom. And finally, you remind yourself that you are not your emotions. They are part of your experience, but they do not define you. A storm passes through the sky, but the sky remains. Your emotions may rage like a storm, but beneath them, you are still there. So, when life hits hard and emotions surge, do not suppress them and do not let them rule you. Observe them, learn from them, and most importantly, choose your actions consciously rather than being controlled by passing feelings. Because the moment you master your emotions, you reclaim your power. When life hits hard, one of the most important things you must do is take responsibility for what you can control and let go of what you can't. This is where many people go wrong. They either try to control everything, becoming consumed by frustration and resentment, or they take responsibility for nothing, slipping into a mindset of helplessness and victimhood. Neither path leads to strength. Neither path leads to growth. You need to recognize the distinction between what is within your power and what is not. Think about it. If you spend your time trying to change other people, trying to rewrite the past, trying to fight against circumstances that are entirely outside your hands, you will exhaust yourself. You will waste precious energy on battles that cannot be won. But if instead you direct that energy toward what you can change, your mindset, your habits, your actions, then you become someone who can navigate even the most difficult of circumstances with clarity and resilience. It's easy to blame the world when things go wrong. It's easy to point fingers at society, at other people, at fate itself. And sometimes you might even be right. Sometimes life is deeply unfair. Sometimes you are handed a situation that you did not cause, that you did not deserve. But even in those moments, you are still left with a choice. Will you define yourself by what happened to you, or will you define yourself by how you respond? This is not about ignoring injustice or pretending that hardships don't exist. It's about recognizing that your personal power lies in how you move forward. If you focus on everything beyond your control, you become paralyzed. But if you focus on what is within your control, you regain agency. Start small. Take inventory of your own actions, your own habits, your own mindset. Ask yourself, what am I doing every day that contributes to my suffering? What could I change, even slightly, that would make a difference? It might be the way you react to stress. It might be the way you structure your time. It might be the way you allow certain toxic influences into your life. Change begins with honesty, and honesty begins with responsibility. The truth is, life will hit hard. There will be times when you feel overwhelmed, when you feel like giving up. But you do not have to be at the mercy of your circumstances. You do not have to be a passive observer in your own life. Decide right now that you will take responsibility for what you can. Decide that you will not waste your energy on things outside your control. Decide that you will stand up even when it's hard and take meaningful action. Because in the end, that is what separates those who crumble under hardship from those who rise above it.